is the STG Soundlabs Radiophonic 1, and let's talk about .SLC. Now, when I was just at NAMM recently, I had a lot of questions about this. People were like, what is this thing? What is it doing? And although it is a modestly sized module, it's really doing something kind of cool. Okay, so a little backstory. I don't know if this is all connected. I think it is. At KnobCon one year, my friend John Sonnenberg did a lecture about what he, as I recall, called wave replacement synthesis. So imagine that you have two simple waveforms going into a switch, like a sawtooth and a triangle wave going into a switch. And as you switch back and forth, you are, of course, moving from the sawtooth to the triangle. So imagine that if you did the switching at a very high rate, you would end up with basically a new wave shape. And that is the principle behind the SLC. You're basically switching back and forth between two different basic wave shapes quickly, resulting in, if the waves are the same frequency, a totally new and more complex wave shape. Obviously, because if you take something simple like a triangle and you add another jag to its shape, you're going to get a different waveform with more harmonics. That is the principle behind the .SLC. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a sawtooth out of our .VCO and put it into the A input. The A is one wave. And I'm going to take the square wave and put it into the B input. So those are our two wave inputs. Now, the way that the switching happens is this jack up here. See, A is white and B is black. And here we have sort of a half white, half black square. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to use a voltage source, an audio range voltage source, which is the triangle, to control the switching back and forth between the triangle, between the sawtooth and the square wave. So let's hear what that sounds like. I'm going to run the slice output into our input over here in .VCA, and we should get some sort of sound. All right. Now, what we're going to do is so you can hear that something is happening because when we take out one of the other waveforms, you can actually hear a different waveform. So let's hear what happens when we mess with this slice point knob, which affects how the slice between the two waveforms happens. It's sort of an effect that kind of reminds me of pulse width modulation, which is a really cool sound I think we all enjoy. But the point is here right now, even just using one oscillator with these really basic wave shapes, we are creating a new and interesting, more complex waveform that we have some control over, which is much different than, say, just putting them into a mixer and mixing them, which you also can do to generate more complex waveforms. But this gives us more functionality and different timbres. And say, wouldn't it be great if we could modulate this slice point? And we can, of course. So I'm going to bring an external LFO in here to do that simply and quickly. So obviously, if you are using a modulation source that is synced to some music you're writing, you can actually get a metric version of the slicing. It is a really great timbre. And let's see, I don't have the specific specs on the difference between slice and switch. My suspicion is that slice is using the window input to switch back and forth between the two waves, and switch is just straightforward switching back and forth. Let's hear the difference. There's some really cool effects in here. Listen to that. Now, a thing I have done, we haven't really talked about it, the dot mix yet, but I'm just going to do this real quick because it's kind of fun. You can take the output of both and then mix them together to get something else. So the combination between your settings here in the mixer and moving the slice point, you're going to get a lot of different outcomes. I just altered my modulation source a bit to get a different outcome. Okay, so, as you might remember from the .vco video, the square wave is an octave lower. So we're getting this, as it switches back and forth between the two waves, it's actually switching octaves in addition to the wave shape. So, and also the frequency of the square wave is an octave lower, so they're actually not the same. These two inputs are different frequencies, so you're getting way different outcomes. Anyway, it is a great sound, and it's obviously the possibilities are actually quite astounding. If we had more oscillators to work with, it'd be interesting. I haven't tried it with anything other than audio sources. I'm not sure if that's a thing that could happen. But yeah, it's obviously an interesting and really straightforward module with, I think, a great deal of application. So within the context of the Radiophonic 1, it's super useful for creating more complex wave shapes in order to do more interesting things. That is the .SLC from the STG Soundlabs Radiophonic 1.